Okay, finally, you started to work on a design project. It could be assigned to you by your company, by your client, or it could be a dream project that you wanted to work for so long. You finally started it. As a first step, you'll want to understand the problem very clearly, right? So you'll start researching. After 3 to 4 hours, your browser will have 16 to 17 tabs open. Your Notion is filled with research notes, and you'll have a lot of screenshots of the references. But still, your Figma file is blank. See, you're trying to research everything and you don't want to miss anything that's crucial to your project. But you already know enough to start designing. That competitor analysis that you just did, you didn't learn anything new from it. The last dribble shot that you just saved, it's not inspiration, it's intimidation. And the last 5 articles that you just read, you got most of it from the first one. The rest is just noise. See, research cannot create understanding, only building does. While you're reading your 7th or 8th article, other designers, maybe even less talented than you, are working on their 4th or 5th version. They're building it, testing it, and learning what's working and what's not. So in this video, you learn how to effectively handle your research process and convert all the information that you gathered into actual progress. So let's get started. So you start researching, right? Competitors, articles, references, screenshots. You'll do all this and even more. Time flies by, you feel productive. But if someone asked you, explain the core user problem in one sentence, could you answer that? Probably not, because all that research didn't build understanding. It's just a pile of information. In fact, the more stuff you consume, the worse it gets. For example, if you look at an amazing design, you think to yourself that this is how you want your design to be. But slowly, that thought of yours will attract these questions. What if my design isn't good enough? What if I miss something? All these self-doubt questions will creep up on you. So you'll keep on going. One more research, one more reference, one more. And this one more will go on and on and on. By the time you realize, you would have spent hours of your time researching. Even after so much research, you will still be confused with zero clarity. It's not just us. Even the greatest of the greatest designers have been through this when they started. So what's really happening here is research feels safe and creating feels risky. As you saw in the first part, our brain craves certainty. It wants a right answer before you do anything. That's why it always keeps us in learning mode. If we don't understand even after so much research, does that mean research and understanding are two different things? Exactly, guys. Those are two different things. Research is collecting information and understanding is making sense of that information by applying it for your specific problem. For example, if you read an article about checkout flow, that's research. And when you sketch the checkout flow and figure out where user might get stuck, that's understanding. And can you see the gap between research and understanding? That's what is called as synthesis. Synthesis doesn't happen when you just read. It happens when you sketch what you learned, map it by yourself, build a rough prototype, and write down the connections. Most designers think a research process will work like this. Research, understand, and design. And that's why a lot of designers spend endless amount of time researching until they understand the concept. But as we just saw, we can never understand anything just by reading. This is how a real process works. You research a little, you build something rough, you test it, see where you misunderstood something or want clarity in something, or see where you have a gap in your knowledge. Learn that, adjust your design, and build it. This happens in a cycle. So understanding doesn't happen before designing. It happens while you design. Now that you know the real research process, let's learn these 4 techniques that will help you implement this real research process into your design process and convert all information that you gathered into actual progress. Technique 1. Enforce 1:3 rule. This technique leveled up my research game, guys. Basically, have your learning to doing ratio 1:3. What I mean is, if you research for 1 hour, build for 3 hours. Because when you do this, you force yourself to confront what you don't actually understand. For example, when you design a checkout flow, you'll quickly realize which part of the process you're unclear about. So your next research session will be about that. You'll learn from that session, and again you will realize where you are unclear about something. And your next research session will be about that. And this goes on a cycle. So what's happening here is, as you grow your understanding, your design also evolves together. So even if someone comes and asks you what you're doing, you can show all this design, explain what are the questions you tackled, and tell them what you're going to do next. So set a hard timer like 30 or 45 minutes. For that 30 minutes, you consume everything that's there. And when the timer goes off, stop consuming and start creating for the next 90 minutes. So basically, the fastest way to know what you need to learn is to start building and see where you get stuck. Technique 2. Synthesize in real time. After every article, competitor analysis, user interview, reference, answer these 3 questions. What I learned, how it applies to my problem, what I'll test next. Do not move until you answer this question. Because right now you're just collecting fragmented information and hoping that it'll magically connect later. But it won't. By answering these 3 questions while all that information is still fresh in your mind, you're doing the synthesized work that turns research into understanding. Plus, you're building a record. When you return to your research session, even after a long gap, you don't have to remember anything. You can just start working. Technique 3. Share your work as early as possible. Don't wait until polished UI. Share the rough sketch or prototype or even a half-baked thinking. Because when you walk someone through your process, you'll see where you stumbled. If you can't explain that clearly, that's what you need to research next. Plus, another reason for you to share early is you might think this is how a certain thing works. But when you actually share it with someone, it gives you a reality check. And it forces you to research, and instead of researching endlessly, you now know what specific gap to fill. Last one, technique 4. Define done as one specific question. Before you start researching, write down one specific question you're trying to answer. Not understand checkout flow. Be very specific about it. For example, should I use one page or multi-step checkout for mobile first users with low trust? Do I need to ask for phone numbers at sign up or can it wait? Should this be a model or a new page? Research only to answer that question. When you can answer that confidently, stop and start building. Most over-research happens because done is undefined. Without a clear target, our brain defaults into learning everything. But when you're answering a specific question, research becomes finite. You know when you are done. By that I mean, when you can answer the question and justify the reasoning behind it. You can track your research works however you want. You can use your notebooks, spreadsheets or whatever. But if you want a system that tracks your 1:3 ratio, prompts you to synthesize, defines your research questions and more, I built a Notion template that does it all. This is the main page where you can track all your research work. The first thing you'll see here is this how to toggle. When you open this toggle, there's 2 more toggles here. The first one is the best practices of researchers. This section gives you a quick guide on how to do research properly, how long to research, the difference between active and passive research, how to check if you actually understood something, when to stop your research, and how much research you need before you start building. In short, it helps you avoid over-researching and move into action faster. The next one is research technique guides. This one breaks down different research methods, what each method is, when to use it, what output you will get, and how much time it usually takes. Think of it as a simple menu for research options, so you can choose the right technique without overthinking. Now coming to the main part, I'll keep this short and crisp. I've divided this template into 3 levels: beginners, intermediate and advanced, so any designer can use it comfortably. There's also another important reason for these levels, and I'll explain that as I walk you through how to use this template. Here's the first database. Every product has a set of processes, and all these processes work together to make a product, right? So you can list your product's process in this column. You won't be able to list everything on day 1. As you research and understand the problem more clearly, you'll gradually uncover more process and you can add them in this column. And then you can use the other columns to note down status of each process, what research technique you used, and a short description of each process. In the column, I've already added the most commonly used methods. But if you don't find the method, you can just type and add it. That's it. As an example, I've used a food delivery app focused on students. You can see I've listed some of the process involved in no particular order: payment flow, checkout flow, order tracking. That's it for the main page. You can come here, list down your product's processes and track the research of each one. Every process has its own page. When you click on a process, it opens up a dedicated page for that specific process. Just click here, it becomes a full page. This page is focused entirely on this one process, so you can track all the research related to this in one place. Each process has its own mini database where you can add the questions you're researching, the current status of it, your research notes, and the next action you need to take. In the status column, you'll see 4 stages: planning, researching, synthesis, and applied. Here's what each one means. Planning. This is where you define the research question and choose your methods. If you're still setting up things, choose the status. The next one is research. Here, you actively run studies and try different research methods to answer the question you defined. The next one is synthesized or synthesis. This is where you take everything you gather and make sense of it. You apply the insights to your specific problem and figure out what works and what doesn't. The last one is applied. In this stage, you've taken your findings and actually applied them to the design. In the research question column, you simply write down the questions you're trying to answer. In the research notes column, you can dump everything like links, screenshots, references, anything you collected. I'll explain this part later. And the next action column is something you fill only after researching and answering 3 main questions. So yeah, this entire page is a database for a single process. It helps you track every question you tackled and whether you apply the insights or not. Now coming to the juicy part. When you click the research node, it opens a dedicated page where you can dump everything you collected during your research and make sense of all the information. The first thing you'll see is a database. This is where you store everything you gather in the research phase. I'll explain every single column. It's super simple. The type column is where you mention the format or category of the item. For example, formats could be articles, videos, tweets, screenshots, something like that. Examples of categories can be competitors, AI research, something like this. The source column is where you write where you found that information. The notes column is for a short description of what you did in that research. And the URL and screenshot columns are where you add your links and images of articles and references you've collected. Guys, if you're using Notion's free plan, keep in mind you can only upload images that are 2 MB. And as you can see here, I've added all the information I've collected. You can even link your ChatGPT chat pages here. That's it for the database. If you scroll down, you'll see 3 main questions as toggles. The first one is key insights, how this applies to my problem, and what I will build. These questions are simple but extremely important. Key insights. This is where you list most important things you've learned while researching your question. For example, here I've noted how visual decision making, delivery time, price transparency, and revision rating influence users' decision. Next one is how this applies to my problem. This is where you connect those insights to your specific problem. The last one is what I will build. This is your game plan. What you actually going to create to solve the problem. In my example, I've planned to design 2 variations of a food cart to see which one users prefer. After answering these 3 questions, you go to the next step. Here, you write one single action from your game plan. Only one, nothing more. Because momentum will take care of the rest. This is where beginner designers can stop. And honestly, that's more than enough for you guys. These 3 questions alone are already a lot of cognitive load for you. If you jump into the advanced section too early, you'll feel overwhelmed and wonder why you're answering so many questions. But once you get comfortable with these 3 questions, your mind naturally starts digging deeper. That's when the advanced section starts to make sense to you guys. Alright, let's move to the advanced section. When you click this add advanced tracker, these 2 toggles will appear. Let me start with the synthesis toggle. This toggle forces you to pause and actually think about what your research means. As designers, we collect tons of data, screenshots, and insights. But none of that matters if you don't convert it into clear understanding. These questions help you connect the dots between all your research, identify the real problem, not the surface level ones, understand user needs with more certainty, and stay grounded in reality. In short, answering these questions turns your messy research into direction. It's what helps you design with intention instead of guessing. And the last toggle, post-build reflection. Reflection is how you grow as a designer. These questions help you look back at your decisions and see what actually happened. By answering them, you spot your blind spots, understand your design patterns and tendencies, learn what consistently works for you, improve your decision making for future projects. Intermediate designers don't need to answer these advanced questions for every single research question. That's the overkill for you guys. You guys can answer these for important or complex part of the process, the places where clarity really matters or where the design decision has a big impact on your project. And for the advanced users, you guys can consistently answer all these questions because you already understand how reflection, synthesis accelerates your craft. And I hope you guys noticed how I haven't focused much on specific research techniques. That's intentional. Techniques are just tools to help you explore and understand. If a method helps you find clarity, keep it. If it doesn't, drop it and use something more effective. The goal isn't to follow a rigid process. The goal is to genuinely understand the problem. If you ever feel the need to track the performance of individual techniques, I can add that in the version 2 of this template. If any of what I just showed feels like something you'll actually use, something that keeps your research organized, helps you make sense of it, and push you to build with confidence, this template is for you. It's the exact system I use, broken down so you don't have to figure out from the scratch. Beginners, intermediate or advanced, You can use it at your own pace and it grows with you. If you want the full template to plug into your own workflow right away, grab it on Gumroad. I've given the link in the description and in the pinned comment. And honestly, it also supports the channel. It helps me upload more frequently, explore more interesting concepts, and create deeper, more useful explanations for you. So it's a win-win. You get a tool that speeds up your design process, and I get to keep making better contents for you. Use it, tweak it, and see how much faster you move from confusion to clarity in your projects. If you feel that this Notion template is useful for you, you can buy it from the link that's in the description and in the pinned comment, guys. It'll also help the channel. And these 4 techniques won't eliminate the messy part of research, but it'll keep you from disappearing into endless research. And when you remember that you already know enough to start, that gives you confidence to start designing, and soon progressively you will start to trust yourself. But there is a different kind of tension that appears after this. You'll notice every design decision you make feels heavier than it should. Not because of the problem is complex, but because every small decision you make feels like you're testing your abilities. It's easy to slip into imagining what other designers would think about your designs, even though none of them are anywhere near your project. That's where your work gets tiring. Your attention drifts from actual users to imaginary audience, and before you notice, you're performing instead of solving problems. In part 3, I'll help you come out of the comparison mode and design for the real users. If you don't want to miss part 3, subscribe to Design Files. And if you feel the Notion template is helpful for you, I've given the link in the description and in the pinned comment. You can buy from there, guys. You'll also help the channel. See you guys in part 3.